What is the true superior psychology? Now, we already covered Nietzsche and the uber-mensch moronic shit and the priest, and one of the guys referred to me as the uber priest, which is the guy the church never wants to come to power because he's the dude that can force his morals onto other people. The third coming of Jesus. He's gonna make us moral and stop raping women and doing all the evil shit. Oh no! Goodness! It's evil! It is! As stated, these people believe throwing out your values and morals and basically doing all the evil shit makes you a good person, and then you just mindlessly follow the rules of the church. The only thing that matters is the rules of the church. But you're somehow above the law, and you're above the rules of everything else, and you can cheat at everything else, but you're not allowed to break the rules of the church. So those of you that believe you're an ubermensch at the church, why don't you break those rules? You don't sound very ubermensch to me. Sound like uber losers. I bet you're a pussy, and that's why you won't break your own rules. Calling it right now. But what is the true superior psychology? One, here's the fact. In every study ever done where they tell somebody they're superior, they immediately self-isolate and start self-immiserating, explaining nobody understands them because they're superior. And then a caste system is created. These people on top, everybody else on the bottom. The human ego loves order. It loves putting order to things that don't have order. And one of the things in life, if you're going to achieve the true superior psychology, is there is no order in nature. There isn't. Order is, I guess you could even argue, I really don't even want to say it, but subjective. How do you like that? Order isn't a thing. It's created by humans. We love geometrical shapes. We love things that are straightforward. We do not thrive well in chaos. So the first theory, or I don't even believe it's a theory, I think it's a fact, you need to accept, is chaos theory. The butterfly effect. So let's talk about it. These guys know poisoning people with heavy metals gives them the advantage in everything, all the way until it came to me, where they poisoned me with heavy metals till I was retarded, took me to court, and then I reported their entire church, and they all ended up in prison, which is something they didn't expect. That is chaos theory. That is physical proof chaos theory exists because I am walking proof of that. And I'm not done with being walking proof of that, by the way. Poisoning people worked for them in the past. Aluminum phosphide and adrenochrome in your coffee, you die. That's what happens. Yeah. Officer Fred tried that to me so many times, it was retarded. And the church tried that to me so many fucking times. It was retarded. And it didn't work. That's chaos theory. Stu breaking into my house, suffocating me with a pillow and shooting me in the head, and then me surviving it. The bullet bounced off of my skull. That's chaos theory. Didn't work out, did it, Stu? So, what am I getting at with this? One, you are in control of nothing. And you or I do not know what's going to happen. Trust me, when Stu was in my backyard planning on shooting me, he didn't expect to get struck by lightning. That is chaos theory. Okay. None of these things were planned. And I remember the wives telling me that anal eating mummy god, white supremacy god, he don't like surprises. I've always enjoyed surprises. As a kid, because you don't know. And part of the thrill of life is not knowing. It's when you know is when life becomes stupid. Okay? When you're talking to a religious moron and you're like, where do the stars come from? God. Where the floor come from? God. Where sand come from? God. Where politics come from? God. 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 Suddenly you know everything. What's the point of living? It's all pointless. They call that nihilism. But I think nihilism is viewed wrong, and I think it's viewed wrong because of Nietzsche. Here's the general truth. The biggest problem this church had with me was under the threat of death, and I just kept going, right, right. In fact, it wasn't until I was poisoned with aluminum, which I believe the reason why my brain feels like it's changing right now is because aluminum doesn't just make you timid and scared. It literally rewires your brain to be timid and scared. And to them, that's funny, it's good. I'm in control. Yes. You emotionally stunted dumbass. But I think the truth of it is nihilism. If I had to pick, is the superior psychology. Because in nihilism, it is the acceptance that you don't know. And as much as Stu was like, I'm gonna kill you, and oh, spooky fingers, he's gonna kill me. And they failed and failed and failed. And we're gonna get into this because when I was making those wishes to Anal Eating Mummy God, he kept redacting them. And it's funny because he's supposed to do these wishes live over a phone call. But they kept cutting the phone call so the church didn't hear me. One of the times I wished that everybody went through what they did to me. So I wanted every church leader to be poisoned just as many times as I was poisoned. I wanted every church leader to get shot in the head, and I wanted every church leader to be poisoned with heavy metals until their vision went bad. And he was like, what would that prove? I was like, you guys keep telling me you're the superior beings, and yet I survived all that, and they also, and I was like, let's be honest, you guys say, do unto others as they do to you, so you would be perfectly okay with doing this to yourself. And he immediately went, that's not fair. I was, are you admitting I'm a superior being? And then this is where you heard the beep, and you realize that the live thing stopped playing, and then he was like, let me explain to you what the superior being is. It's more of a concept. It's not an actual state of being. And he was like, and I know we understand your genetics and we understand why you survived all those things. And I started laughing and he was like, no, stop. Because you are physically superior does not mean you're superior to us. And I was like, it sounds like you just said I was superior because it sounds like all your gods, your church leaders that have to murder 6 kids because they're cowards, and they have to murder 7 women because they're cowards, and it's easy for them to do under the threat of death with an army of assholes at the church backing them to make sure that this serial killer lunatic gets away with committing an atrocity because they have to throw out all their values for the church and make sure they follow the rules of the church, and they can't act above the rules of the church because they're pussies. But also the church doesn't hold them to account when they do act above the rules, which makes no sense at all. But I was like, it really sounds like, I was like, can I just hear you say that I'm superior? And Anal Eating Mummy God was like, Bobby, I'm not saying that. And I was, why? And he was, you don't want me to say that because then the other guys are going to get mad that I said that. Not mad, jealous. Jealous is the word. So my theory, and even when I was dealing with these people, once again, gun to my head, threats, is me just accepting the general fact nobody knows how you're gonna die. And I remember telling that to the belly girl, and it gave her hope. I told her, regardless of how much these people want you to believe it, nobody knows how you are going to die. And I remember watching relief wash over. So if you're a part of this church and they have convinced you that they're gonna kill you, first of all, nobody knows how you are going to die. That is a fact. Anal Eating Mummy God was wrong about it. Officer Fred told me 100 times, you're going to die from drinking poison coffee. It's going to give you a heart attack. Didn't happen. So he's a liar. That's what that is. By default. Because if he's actually a god and telepathic, he would know. He doesn't. Because he's a fool. And the same shit with Stu. Somebody's gonna shoot you in the head. Yeah, it happened, Stu, but what happened? You failed. That's what happened. And you can't live with your failure because you're emotionally stunted and you're a narcissist. And you can't admit it, Stu. That's because you're pathetic. Now, Blondie, I remember my favorite thing about these people is they want you to trust them, but they lie about everything. And this is an example of that. Blondie promised before the first time he brought the perjury, I told him, innocent people are if I sign that, innocent people are gonna get hurt and a lot of people are gonna die. And he told me, no, that's not going to happen, and that's exactly what happened. He lied. Okay? And this is the thing with these people, how ridiculously they get off the rails with their lies, and then they tell you, I can do no wrong. When the blue-eyed guy came to me, he was trying to talk me into becoming one of their loser baby fuckers that are completely enslaved by the church, but somehow are free men, but they're also enslaved by the church, which makes no sense at all. But in 1984, that freedom is slavery. No. Slavery is slavery, and you guys are slaves to the church. You're property. Every last one of you is property. This is what happens when you don't have sympathy or empathy in your world. Everything is material, and everything is valued through materialism. They call it dialectical materialism. Trust me, you don't want to bring that up to a fascist. They're going to start screaming and yelling, that's not true, that's not how things work, when that is how things work. So, what theory should you go through with life? Chaos theory. It's what Jurassic Park is based off of. The power go, that one pissed off employee bugs the system and tries to make money for himself, and it gets everybody killed, including that employee. That's what the true story of Jurassic Park about. And the true story of the original Jurassic Park is actually closer to Too Big to Fail, because the idea was the park was going to be too big to fail. And then it failed. And that's called chaos theory, okay? As much as you don't want to fucking admit it, like, one of my favorite examples of chaos theory is there are these pilots on an airplane, and the landing gear light didn't turn on, so instead of just ignoring it and assuming the landing gear was deployed and the light was bad, they started fucking with the console, and they ended up putting the plane into a nosedive, and it crashed. Only to find out later that the light didn't turn on because the bulb was dead. And that got everybody killed. Imagine 200 people died because one light didn't turn on. The landing gear was down and everything. Kaboom! This is chaos theory incarnate. And as much as people go, oh, if you're a perfectionist, you're going to learn about chaos theory because it happens. Okay? Shit happens, and that's just a general fact of life. I happened. And I remember Anal Eating Mummy God explained to me, he's in control of everything, and I was like, oh, so what I did was part of a plan, and I remember this awkward silence. Doesn't sound like you're in control. And people that are raped, they have controlism. If you're abused as a kid, you have control issues, okay? And the natural state of people is not to be in control of anything, and that is my personal opinion. I think people with control issues are severely emotionally and mentally damaged because they are willing to surrender everything for some semblance of control. They need to know somebody's in control, and they don't even care if it's a good person, okay? And that's just scary. It is. And you shouldn't go through life like that, by the way. You shouldn't be trying to control anything or everything. But these idiots, because narcissists have to prove to everybody they can do things, and you tell them they can't do something, they will spend their entire life trying to do that thing. Okay? You tell them they can't draw a perfect circle, they'll sit down and waste hours and hours drawing perfect circles. You tell them you can't replace somebody. At some point, somebody told this guy, Jose, the dude that started this church, he couldn't replace Jesus. He's going to replace Jesus. That's what's going to happen. He's not going to stop. Okay? Like, and that is an extremely dangerous and stupid psychology. It's an effective psychology, but it's also stupid because then you end up fighting with reality. When somebody's like, this is how reality works, and I want to talk about situational awareness and how you can project most likely outcomes, and how I would project most likely outcomes and these people would rage against them. One of the stupider events was the wives out of fear. You should never make decisions out of fear. Okay, and it's extremely hard for me not to do that because my brain's been rewired through aluminum poisoning to do things out of fear, which is why I've been making the wrong decisions for a long time now. When you're free of that, you don't make the wrong decisions, you make the right decisions. There's an entire psychology thing, is what would you do if you weren't afraid? Do that. Okay? When I met with Jasmine and she made me president, I was like, It's not like you guys held a bullshit fake election, got me adopted by Doug Boyle, and then made me president because you were terrified of me signing a paper, and then everything's going to go bad because you're going to be trying to force me to do things I don't want to do, when all I want to do is live my life and be free somewhere. I'm glad I helped you guys, but if you just given me some money, things wouldn't have gone bad like this. And I remember the stare, and she went, we didn't do that. We didn't do, but you have a defective psychology. That's why you think like that, and we're gonna turn you into Jose, the worst person on the goddamn planet, that every leader at this church is modeled after. Every leader has to do what Jose did, okay? One of the more fucked up memories I remember from them, because they do a series of acid trips to give you Jose's memories, is this dude is him performing a C-section and then trying to crawl into the woman's womb, like cutting open a woman's belly, and instead of like stitching her back together, he tries to crawl in, and the wives start trying to explain to me that his ways are beyond ours, and that's why he did that. And I was like, he did that because he has lead poisoning. He is peripheral nervous system, which enables you to connect with other people. Yeah, something you don't know. Is gone, and he wishes to connect with a mother. Okay? And he wants to be reborn so he can do it all right this time, because he did it all wrong last time. He wants a loving mother. And instead of that, he ended up just killing that woman because he's fucking mentally ill. And the same shit happened with Jack the Ripper. If you guys want to know what Cole I'm talking about, just look up Jack the Ripper and when this church got to England, and you'll see that there's a direct correlation between the two. Because when I say they are every serial killer in America, they are every serial killer in America. These guys aren't smart, slick, that shit in the media where they're like serial killers are super intelligent. They're not. They're all trained by the church. And they actually have low IQs. They're just trained like parrots. They're given a series of skills to make sure they don't get caught. And they are the FBI, so they know exactly what to do and what evidence to destroy so they don't get caught. Unless their name is Stu, in which case they fuck it up all the time because they're imbeciles. Yeah. So, yeah, just that. My theory, the closest you're going to get to the superior psychology is a growth mindset, accept change, accept that things can be better, and accept that you don't know. Just go, is there a God? I don't know. And don't be afraid of the unknown. Because as soon as you crumble to fear, you are going to make mistakes your entire life based out of that fear. The thing the wives talked about is I didn't understand why they didn't just start murdering the church leaders. This was a question where I was like, so they live together? Yeah. And I was like, and the women prepare their food? I was like, yeah. And I was like, and they know how to poison people? And I was like, yeah. I was like, how come they don't just poison the church leaders and kill them? And they were like, well, then they would die. And they don't know that. I was like, he died. What happened? I don't know. He died. I didn't poison him. Just fucking lie. Like, oh, if you lie to the church, they kill you. How do they know you lied? They're not telepathic. They can't figure that shit out. And we got into that, and they started getting frustrated with me because it actually involves them doing something. But it also implies that these guys aren't as powerful as they pretend to be, and they're not. They're flesh beings like you or me, okay? It is my favorite quote. There isn't anybody's whose eyes you can't gouge out or throat you can't slash open. That is just a fact. And as much as these guys want to pretend to be superior, they're not. One of the most dangerous things you can ever do is tell somebody they are a superior being because it alters the way they perceive everything. Okay? Stay safe and, yeah, probably think about this.